Society Matters.
Hello and welcome back to HMTV here at the Holocaust Memorial and Tolerance Center. I'm Bernie Furshpan, your host of Raised by Survivors. I have a very, very special guest, somebody who I absolutely love. She works here at the Holocaust Memorial and Tolerance Center. She is the scholar in residence here, and we've had one for the past, I don't know how many years.
12 years.
At least 12 years. Linda Burghardt, Dr. Linda Burghardt, thank you so much for being here with me today to talk about your experience as a second-generation survivor.
My pleasure.
You've been here for 12 years,
Yes.
would you say?
Mm-hmm.
And what compelled you to get involved with the museum here?
Long history. Mostly the legacy from my parents, wanting to honor them, wanting to keep their memory alive, and many other factors also because there's a larger story than just our own family. The more I learned, the more I realized how important it is to make this legacy matter.
That's the common thread between this 2G community, and that is to keep their memory alive, to honor them. But why are we doing it publicly? You know what I'm saying? We could do it at home. You
Right.
can keep their memory alive. You can have their pictures, and you can watch their films, things like that. But why do we go public with that?
Well, it's historically significant.
It is.
We have the motto, never forget, and never allow any repeats. And so there's more than just keep it alive. There's making sure that the world knows that we are keeping it alive, that they should keep it alive because it matters, and we don't want it ever to happen again to anyone.
I keep it alive, and I went public with it because I wanted the young people to know that this is how low society can descend, but they can do better.
Yes, very true.
It's so important to show contrast. People don't really get it until you show a contrast. This is how bad it can get. This is how good it can get. Otherwise, people just take things for granted. They don't realize that it can go sideways, their situation in life. Because they learned in the Holocaust that you could lose your family, you could lose everything you own and everything you know in literally a flash.
Yes, yes. And the more you study this, the more you find there are layers and layers.
Right.
And it's very important to get to, as close as we can, to the bottom of it, to understand the evil that propelled it, and to understand where the evil comes from.
Absolutely.
And if we all have it in us, which some people believe, some maybe more than others, but perhaps we all have it, and we need to learn how to deal with it, control it, what to do about it. So the more we know, the more important it is.
Very true. Where did you grow up, Linda?
I grew up in Upper Manhattan in Washington Heights.
Okay.
And
when did you leave Long Island? I mean, New York City?
Oh, well, I got married. You know that story.
Okay,
Yeah,
yes.
I never planned to leave Manhattan. I was sort of dragged kicking and screaming from the Upper West Side where I was living. But my husband was a professor on Long Island, and it made sense to live here, and I wanted to be with him. So there we are.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And now you grew up in a home with two survivors?
Yes.
Okay. I find that very interesting also, is that survivors had an affinity to find other survivors to marry and start families.
Well, my parents were married in Vienna, so they were in their 20s, and they met on a hike, they said. They were very non-physical people. They never did anything sporty, but for some reason they met on a hike. And they only knew each other 6 months, but Hitler was coming in, and they got married on the last day that Jews were allowed to marry in Austria, July 31st, 1938. And then my mother had papers through a cousin in New York, which is also another one of these old stories, and they were able to get out. So they met and married there. They brought their sensibility of being survivors to New York, and we lived in a neighborhood where every other person, if not more, were refugees and survivors.
What was it like growing up with them? How far back do you remember in terms of realizing that they were survivors? When did you realize that they were Holocaust survivors?
Really not until I was in high school. I knew they came from Europe, because my mother always talked about over there, how much nicer it is over there. So I
Really?
had to eventually figure out where was over there and could I ever get there. But no, she said, it ended when they left. It's not there anymore. So I really didn't learn very much in elementary school, and we didn't study very much history. My parents wanted to be Americans. They didn't want to talk about the past. They named me Linda rather than one of the European names that they thought of, because they wanted us to be Americans and to make our new lives in this new land. The problem with that was it wasn't real. They didn't believe it. It was like a little scrim that they put on things. And so I grew up with a duality, knowing this is what we should do,
Right.
and this is what really matters. And they were two different things.
Wow, that's interesting. Did they talk to you about the Holocaust at any one point where they sat you down and said, well, this is exactly what happened to us?
No.
And did you ever see them watch films on the
No,
Holocaust?
they avoided everything.
They avoided it altogether. They really wanted to move on.
They wanted to move on.
Yeah, my parents
on the
actually,
surface.
My parents would watch Holocaust films at home, and I would pass by the living room and watch the films and see their reactions to it, and they would sit there and sob.
Oh, yeah.
And I knew that there was a connection there. I knew that we were Jewish. I knew that they fled or escaped somehow, some way, but I didn't know the details.
Right.
And I didn't know until I was older, like in my maybe mid-teens,
Oh, yeah.
late teens, perhaps.
Yes, yes.
And it was devastating to hear all of this, that I had a family. I never thought about that.
I know, me too. I know.
I didn't think that I had a family.
We didn't. We just didn't. You know, the thing was about being in Washington Heights, many kids didn't have grandparents. Many kids didn't have aunts and uncles. And it was kind of normal. And it was only until I went out into the wider world that I found out that our situation is really very unusual. And that was basically, once I left the neighborhood, instead of going to the local high school, I went to Bronx Science. And I met a whole variety of kids. They weren't all Jewish, for example. It's like, who are these people who aren't Jewish, you know?
Right.
And found out about people's families and just how different everything was for other people.
Right.
But if I brought that home to discuss with my parents, they didn't want to have anything to do with it.
Did your mom make food relative to Austrian food?
Oh, yes. Oh,
right.
yes.
Did you?
I still do.
Right.
Yeah.
You do?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
and you were okay with it?
Yeah, well, it was a normal food.
It was your normal food?
Yes.
But you saw
Yes.
other kids eating different food, American food?
Well, pizza came into the neighborhood when I was maybe 13 or so. And that was a big deal. Pizza. Oh, my parents were terrified of pizza. Like, how could you touch something like that? But of course, we were
It's so
kids.
unsophisticated.
Well, it was like junk. Who eats that stuff?
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
It's actually quite good for
It's
you.
wonderful. You're sure. But all the kids wanted to eat pizza, so
Right.
I would try to get my 75 cents or whatever it cost then for a slice to, eat pizza with everybody
it was
else.
15 cents.
Okay.
I remember 1963, 64, 65.
Yes.
I lived in Brooklyn, and it was 15. My mom gave me 15 cents for a slice of pizza, but pizza is not the same like it used to be.
Right. That's true.
There was something really special about pizza.
Yes. Yes.
It used to ooze with that, right? Do you remember the orange oil that
Oh,
dripped?
yes,
And it was
yes.
delicious.
And the way in New York you eat a slice, you fold it.
Oh,
you
yeah.
walk down the street with it.
You can fold it and
so,
eat it. It was
yes,
delicious.
exactly. Yeah.
So you grew up. In the Upper West, and you went to Bronx High School. And I knew about that school actually. I think I talked to my parents about going there. I also wanted to go to aviation high school. I wanted to be a pilot.
Yeah.
But my mother said, "What kind of a husband are you going to be? You know, you're going to be flying around. Your family's going to be home." She was a wonderful woman. She really cared about family, because to her it meant the world.
Oh, yeah. Our parents, for those of us with survivor parents, were the world. They were the world. And we knew we had to take care of them, even though it was never put that way to us. But if my mother was unhappy, forget about it. Everyone else, just could not function. And we always knew, because she's the one who left her parents in Vienna when she left.
Right.
And never saw them again.
Did she associate with other friends who were from the same area in Europe?
Well,
or she just wanted to Americanize altogether?
Well, as I said, that was just they only said that.
Right.
They really didn't mean it.
They didn't mean it.
No, they just, it was probably like a nice thought. This is what we're here to do, and we should raise children without the trauma that we suffered. But you can't. It comes out some other way. It's like the oil in the pizza. You
It's
can't
so
keep it
true.
in. It comes out.
Yes.
And if it comes out without words and without stories and without facts, it's very distressing to children. It was very distressing. My parents were very calm. They were very nice to me, but I suffered tremendously because of the trauma that they went through, because it was unexpressed. And
How did you suffer, and what was your outlet?
You suffer through tension, through unhappiness in the household. We were 4 in our household, but our kitchen table had 5 chairs. Why did it have 5 chairs? Because my mother couldn't let her mother go. So her chair sat at the kitchen table with us.
I see.
Now, right? So, like, nobody would explain that. It took me years before I even got an understanding of it. We just were 4 people with 5 chairs. Like, what's wrong with that?
Right.
You know? So I think the main way that, well, I don't know if it's main, but one of the ways that I know people suffer, that I suffered and my older sister and my friends with Holocaust parents, is that you hold yourself back. You can't fully develop. You're not free to develop. A big part of you is held back. Well, you know, I only got my PhD a year before I came to work here. So that's pretty unusual.
Yes.
It took me a long time
Okay.
to develop and to have the emotional maturity to actually study the forbidden topics. What were the forbidden topics? Everything that happened to my parents before they stepped off the boat in 1938. Everything was forbidden. You could not know it. Well, if you're interested in intellectual things, how do you develop? If you can't know things, you can't know a lot of things. Can't know about them, can't know about Europe, can't know about the war, can't know about evil, can't know about suffering, can't know about all of these enormous things that were the most important things in their life.
Right.
Can't know about loss, can't know about death.
Wow.
Can't know any of those
Talk
things.
about overprotection.
Yeah, very much overprotection. And it didn't work for me because I wanted to know stuff.
Right,
I think every kid
So
wants
you
to know
suffered
stuff.
because of that as well, just the
Yeah.
unknowing, right?
But you hold yourself back because if your parents tell you you're not supposed to know, you believe you're not supposed to know.
Right.
You really have to be, you know, maybe, well, I don't know what age now, but I know for me, maybe 15, 16, before I started sensing, well, maybe they're wrong. You know, maybe now kids at 10 feel that. I don't know, everything's come down. You
Right,
know?
it has, yeah,
And,
sure.
Yeah, I don't know if it's good or bad, but it is. That's the
I think
culture
it helps
now.
them develop
Yeah.
maybe earlier. And look, you know, that's the reality.
Right.
Our family, our parents suffered greatly at a very young age.
Yes.
So
yes.
they weren't protected at all.
Right.
Many of them came out okay. Not all of them did. My parents were very generous and kind and,
Yes.
and terrific people, just great human beings that were very much loved. But growing up with them was, for me, definitely different than other kids growing up.
Did you grow up in an environment with other Holocaust survivor
Yeah,
kids?
so they moved, they brought us to Brooklyn, first to the Bronx for a few months, and then we moved to Brooklyn. They looked for a community. It wasn't a Jewish community, it was a mixed community, but there were a lot of Holocaust survivors. They were looking to be surrounded by other Holocaust survivors
Yes.
because they could relate to each other.
Yes, my parents do. There were not many from Austria because it's such a small country.
Right.
There were many Germans, and they related very closely to the Germans, but culturally, Germans look down on Austrians. So there was always a little bit of that. And also, Austrians look up to Germans. And so there was a little bit of hero worship sometimes.
Right.
But in our family, one of the forbidden topics, for example, was politics. You couldn't discuss politics. You couldn't even discuss, like, New York City politics.
And I wonder why.
Because politics, well, it's involved with Nazis. It's involved with
Okay.
with the takeover.
There's always danger in politics.
There's danger in knowing.
Yeah.
That was sort of the bottom
Wow,
of it.
wow.
And, politics, one, it's fascinating. Two, it's extremely important.
Right.
But you couldn't discuss it.
So they basically kept you kind of like in a room, a virtual room, and you're looking through a keyhole, and
Yeah, that's well put.
you don't really get a full picture of the world because
Right.
you're limited with what you know.
Right. Life should be nice.
They're trying to protect you,
Right.
but in reality, that's not the reality
Right.
of the world.
Right. Exactly. They did what they could do.
Right.
It took me many years to understand their viewpoint. And they lived a very long time. My mother lived till 97, my father to 103.
That's amazing.
My father thought suffering was good for you. He said, that's why I'm living so long.
Right.
I suffered. So he would say to me, you're hungry? When I was a child. Well, it's good for you to be hungry. Why is it good for me to be hungry? It'll teach you that you can be hungry.
Well,
you may in your life be hungry sometime.
Right.
Now you know.
He's making the point of the contrast that we were talking about before. So you won't appreciate what you have unless you have the extremes, unless
Yes.
you experience the extremes.
Yes, I think that's true. Yes.
It's all relativity. It's that the theory of relativity. It's like I was driving to a school. I was going to speak at a school. And it was several months ago, and it was snowing. I think it may have been March. It snowed for a little bit, but the branches were full of snow. It looked like a winter wonderland. It was beautiful as I'm driving on the Southern State Parkway. And I'm getting up in front of the students, and I said, did you guys see the beautiful snow out there? It's like a winter wonderland. I said, to us, it's beautiful. If my 10-year-old dad was looking at it,
Right.
to him, it would have been a horror show
Yes.
because he had to sleep in it. It's different sleeping in it versus looking at it from your,
Right.
warm seat in a warm car
Yeah.
as you drive by. So everything has to do with perspective.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's one of the most important lessons I think it's important to experience a lot of different things in life because it teaches you, what the worst situation is, but it makes you grateful. A lot of people take other people for granted.
Yes.
And then there's a breakup. And then one of them says, please take me back. I promise I won't take you for granted. Take me back. I won't take you for granted. I'll spend more time with you. That's when you wake up, right? That's when you become conscious. Somebody
Yes.
wakes up in a hospital bed and says to the doctor,
Yes.
get me out of here. I
Yeah.
promise when you get me out of here, I'm going to exercise and eat right. I won't let this happen again. And then we start taking things for granted again. But it's so important to get the extremes without it killing you, of course, so that you are more grateful.
Yes,
These are
very
the
good
lessons we
attitude.
learned from our family.
Absolutely, yeah. You have a whole paradigm shift if you see things in a different way, if you're able to be grateful for them. That's absolutely true.
Did you ever see your parents cry?
So, my mother, a couple of times, she would sort of melt down sometimes. She would want things that she couldn't have, because my parents came as adults. So they didn't, thank God, go through what your father went through in the woods, anything like that. They lost everything. They lost their family, they lost their money, they lost their professions, they lost their property, they lost their sense of safety, they lost their language, they lost everything. But they survived. My father was grateful. My mother never got over losing her parents, having them taken away from her, and she never had enough to make up for it. I don't think you can have enough. But, she fell into the materialistic, cultural, thing of, if I have more, then I'll feel better, that sort of thing. So she always wanted more. And my father, he was a watchmaker. He was trained by Hayes when he came to this country. So he was able to have jobs, and he actually did pretty well. He figured out the stock market at some point. But she never got as much, as many mink coats, as many diamond rings. She was always wanting. So she would fall apart sometimes. My father, well, it's once.
But I think it's
Yes.
deeper than that. Don't you agree?
Oh, yes. Oh, definitely much
It was
deeper.
definitely deeper than
Yeah,
that.
they lost their future.
Right.
And
Because she always had this sense of insecurity, and she wanted to reinforce this sense and feel better about herself and,
Yes.
and feel more secure and
Yes.
feel that she can have whatever she wants. And this
yes.
only reinforced that there is that
right.
instability.
Right. And she felt guilty and ashamed
Yes.
at leaving her parents. But this is what happened. The family got together. They decided which of the children, the adult children, would go first. The men went first because the Nazis were collecting men at the beginning. And then, then it became her turn, and she married my father and brought him over, really saved his life because,
Sure.
yeah, he wouldn't have been able to get out without her. So every time she wanted something, like Friedel, I want a mink coat. We can't afford a mink coat. Friedel, I saved your life. Okay, fine, we'll get a mink coat.
Okay, a little
it's
guilt.
just kind of fun. Yeah, it just, it became a family
Right,
joke, but,
right.
but it was
It's funny.
true. She did save him. But who really has
Right.
enough, if you think about it? What are we missing in ourselves? Yeah.
You mentioned before that it was carried on to you, and you have children?
Yes, and I worried about carrying it on to them.
Correct. So
Yes.
my brother, Mark Furshpan, is a PhD in psychology, but his research, when he got his degree in the early 1980s, was to study intergenerational trauma. And so he did his research on Holocaust survivors and second generation, third generation. And he coined the term intergenerational trauma. And it was something that I was proud of him for doing that, but it didn't really mean that much to me as much as it means now. Because I have that same concern. What did I pass on to my kids?
Right.
And I want them to be happy.
Yes.
Right? We want all children to be happy.
Right.
We don't want anybody to be traumatized. Why can't we reboot this society
Right.
and start from scratch? You did a wonderful seminar on the Catskills, and you've made me realize so many things about that, because we would go up to the Catskills in the summers. We went to the Nevele, the Concord, Kiamisha Lake. I remember those days. They were great days, and I didn't think about it then. But the people we were surrounded with were all Holocaust survivors.
Right.
And you brought that up, and then it's like an aha moment. Yes, this is something that they kind of created.
Yes, the humor especially. It
The
was a
humor. This
way
is
of
where
coping.
stand-up comedies
Oh, yeah.
started, actually, a little bit before in the Yiddish theater, and then it just carried on to the Catskills, and we
Right.
kind of like created this whole new industry.
Oh, yes, yes. It was very important in helping them heal, without a doubt.
Isn't that
Yes,
interesting?
yes.
Humor.
Oh,
Now,
yeah.
was it used also during the Holocaust? Are there books about how humor was used in the camps?
There's very little. There's very little. There are some stories about the prisoners making fun of the Nazis among themselves, but punishable by death. So it's
Of
not
course,
that likely. Yes.
of course.
Yes. Yeah.
But it is remedial. It's therapeutic.
Oh yeah, and it's human nature.
It is
it's our
human nature,
to
yes.
laugh and to seek humor and to seek connection with other people through humor.
Even at a funeral, people sometimes giggle.
Yes.
It's not that they can help themselves. It's just to basically deal with the pain.
Right.
So
Yes.
it's something that
Yes.
we can be proud of. That
Oh, yeah.
we launched a whole new career as a result of suffering. I think
True.
we have the patent on suffering.
Well, pain is very isolating. You feel alone.
Very true.
And humor connects you.
Very true.
So there's a direct connection between the two. It's very, very important, very healing.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
What is your exact degree that you have
I have a PhD in Holocaust history.
in Holocaust history?
Yes.
That's fabulous.
Yeah. Yeah. It was fascinating.
I hope we take
Fascinating experience.
advantage of your knowledge here as much as possible, because you really do contribute quite a bit
Oh, thank
between the books and the webinars and the seminars.
Yes.
I'd love to see more seminars. I don't know, not to put you on the spot, but I would love to see more of those seminars. I find them incredibly informative, but you present it in such a way that it's so interesting.
Well, thank you. Thank
So
you.
you have a way about you in terms of how you do that.
I enjoy it.
What do you see for the future? I mean, there's still a lot of adversity out there. There's still anti-Semitism. There's
Right.
still hatred of all
Right.
kinds. There's still genocides going on.
Yes.
Well, what is your hope for the future of humanity?
I hope that people find a way to communicate with each other, to realize each other's humanity. And I think that's part of the problem, is that, the Nazis didn't see Jews as people, subhumans, right? I mean, in war, I think usually the enemy sees you as subhuman, because otherwise, how can you kill? How can you destroy? How can you express this cruelty toward humanity? If you don't see the people as people equal to yourself, then it's much easier. So my hope is that there is some way that we have that, as we talked about before, the paradigm shift where you saw gratitude you saw the snow in its beauty and looked at it and it's the opposite, that your father had to sleep in it when he was 10 years old. Well, people can see each other differently.
Sure.
Yeah. And, if you connect with people, even like if you go to the grocery store and you have a harried checkout clerk who's just shoving everything through the scanner, and you just look in their eyes and speak to them quietly and gently, how are you? It's a miracle. Sometimes they'll totally change from what they're doing and connect with you.
Absolutely.
And you leave after
Well
a minute or
said.
two, but your day has changed.
Yes,
Yeah.
for sure. Well, I want to thank my guest, Dr. Linda Burghardt, for being here. She's an outstanding human, an outstanding scholar, an outstanding person here at the Holocaust Memorial and Tolerance Center. Thank you again for being with us, and thank you all for joining me. I'm Dr. Bernie Furshpan here on HMTV, your host of Raised by Survivors. Until next time.